Hello, this is Pam. Today I'm going to be answering your questions about how to recover from multiple sclerosis. And if we have not yet met, my name is Pam Bartha and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. And I'm very excited to spend this time with you. Last week I was not here doing an event with you because I did my masterclass training and we had over 2,000 people register for that masterclass training. And the class was about how to recover from multiple sclerosis. And I always get a ton of questions. And at the end, I answered a lot of them, but there were too many questions. So today, I'm going to spend more time answering questions. And if you're joining me live, then please feel free to write down your questions in the question box. And I'm going to see how many questions I can get to. So if we haven't met yet, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was just 28 years old. That was 29 years ago, coming close to 30 years now. And I'm really happy to share with you that I've beat MS for the past 29, 30 years because I discovered very early on that multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases are caused by, the biggest cause would be chronic infections in the body. And it is so super exciting for me that I've been able to live an amazing life, full life, but also to help other people recover. What can this do for you? If you're suffering with some type of neurodegenerative disease, including multiple sclerosis? I just want to share a really quick success. So we have our academy, and a lot of people are hearing about it, the Live Disease Free Academy, and wanting to join us. So I just wanted to share what one of the students is doing. We had our call yesterday and there was quite a few people that were sharing successes, but this is really profound. So one of our students has been working really hard, and in the program, she's dealing with multiple sclerosis and also quite disabled from it. Really restricted mobility, using a wheelchair and a walker sometimes, and really tightness in her wrist and not being able to use her hand very well. But the people that I work with are such amazing heroes. So she is a wellness champion. She found me and she determined to go to work. And I just have to say the faith in these people is amazing. So she's been following the eating plan really well, which greatly reduces the food to the infections that are making her sick, then supporting the body in many different ways. And it's really hard when you don't have a lot of support. You have extended care helping you, or home care. And so you really have to rely a lot on other people, but she is such a champion and she's working so hard. And so she's been working and treating parasites and cleaning up dental infections. So really reducing the infections in her body. And she just started on a protocol, a stronger, aggressive protocol, working with a doctor that understands how to treat parasites. And just 2 days on that treatment, it was pretty tough for her because it's really hitting them hard. So she stopped and took a break, but she was like, Pam, like after I took the break, I could do, like she had appointments and she could just do all her appointments. She could be out the whole day without being tired. She said, I haven't been this strong in years. And that was just like 2 days, I believe, 2 or 3 days maximum on this. But again, the treatments are not the perfect cure on their own. She's done so many things to get to this place. And so that's what I shared on my masterclass training, is how you can take your health and your life back by treating the cause of why you are dealing with chronic disease. So I'm super excited for her. I can never promise people will come out of wheelchairs or be able to get rid of their walker, but we see this very often. And that's the exciting thing, is that very often there is a lot of mobility that can come back. So there really is hope for you. So going on to the questions, we had, as I said, over 2,000 people register for my masterclass training. And if you're just joining me, please, if I say something that makes sense to you, give me a thumbs up or send some hearts and love, because I don't get to see your beautiful faces and it's a little more interactive. Please also put your questions in. And if you're listening to the replay, go ahead and put your questions in, because we do try to answer all of the questions that come in. So the first question I wanted to address is by Cindy. And Cindy asked, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1992 and I have lesions. Is it too late for me to recover? So again, what I've shared with the student that is really in the thick of treatment and has had MS for a number of years and dealing with severe disability from it, that yes, there is hope for all of you that are dealing with not just multiple sclerosis, but other chronic disease also, which is so exciting. There's so much that we don't know about MS. As far as, you know, we were told that if we're in a wheelchair, that's it. We're never going to get any better. Hopefully the MS drugs will slow down the progression. But the key is that whatever is in the inflammation stage in your body, that can be healed. And apparently there's a lot that is inflamed that can be turned around. If it is permanent scar tissue to a nerve, we cannot correct that at this point. But we're seeing with a lot of mobility, things like drop foot can resolve, and spasticity can completely heal, balance can come back, so, and strength back in legs. So absolutely. So what I see in my students is that I cannot promise full recovery, but we're seeing that if you treat the infections well enough, and that is the key. It's not like just popping a pill and, oh, it didn't work. Just like this one student, she's just like, just trying, working it and treating them more aggressively and hitting the nail on the head. So excited for her. So you're going to hear more stories about her, and I'm going to be showcasing her in the future. So the key is that, yes, you can stop the progression of the disease and you will have a lot of recovery, more recovery than you thought possible. And isn't that awesome? Ashley's asking, how can I prevent flare-ups and how can I battle them without steroids? So the big thing to understand is that when we have like multiple sclerosis and we get this big attack, that means that is a point in time where our immune system is just too compromised and it's not dealing with those infections, and they're really becoming a little bit too active. And so we're getting this surge in inflammation and the immune system is maybe overreacting. So the key is, how do we make those infections less active? Of course, we want to treat them, but how do we make them less active? First of all, stop feeding them. That's the big thing. So things like whatever we can do to make them more quiet and to build up our immune system, we do have to treat them, absolutely. But things like making sure we get enough sleep, making sure that we manage stress, making sure that we are not feeding these infections. And what is their primary fuel for most of them is carbohydrates. So that would be sugar, simple sugars, baked goods, etc. So we're really reducing the carbohydrates. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, we're getting the total grams of carbs, which includes fiber and sugar, all the way down to between 35 to 50 total grams of carbs in a day. And the sweet spot seems to be about 35 to 40 total grams of carbs. So when we decrease the total grams of carbs and we bring the nutrition up with different types of vegetables, then we find that the microbes are not as active. They're not as happy and fat. And so they're more quiet. And then we notice that our inflammation starts to go down a little bit. And then we notice that we're feeling a little bit better because the symptoms subside a little. So definitely to prevent attacks, we, number one, want to make sure that we are doing things to strengthen our immune system and we are not feeding those infections. And then ultimately we have to treat them, because otherwise you're carrying this load of infection with you. And at some point in life, the stress will be too high, or maybe you'll end up getting some kind of infection and you'll have to go on antibiotics, or whatever the case is, not sleeping well, etc. That's the time where the infections become more active and our immune system is struggling, and then we have an attack. So it's really the environment that brings on these attacks. And so we can avoid. So the steroids, what they do is they just shut down the immune system. So it's like there's a war going on between your soldiers, which are the good guys, and the infections, which are the bad guys. And so the steroids are just shutting down your immune system, right? So shutting down the war. But the invaders are still there and they're still taking over more ground, and they will still cause more disability in time. So we have to be aware of that. Good question though. And Artrell, could my disease come from both tooth infections and sinus problems? So it is true that dental infections can definitely be a tax or a burden on your immune system, absolutely. But what we're seeing, and they have to be addressed, absolutely. But the biggest factor is probably for most of the people that I work with is that there was a time in your life, and it could have been before the age of 10, that you were on a lot of antibiotics. And it doesn't have to even be a ton of antibiotics, but several times. Maybe you had surgeries, or you had your tonsils removed, or your appendix removed, or maybe you had different types of bladder infections or ear infections, strep throat, tonsillitis, bronchitis, all kinds of different childhood infections. And those situations would have warranted the use of antibiotics. And that's when it throws the natural defense off. It kills a lot of the good microbes off. And this is where the bad microbes start to grow. The parasites, the fungus, the bad bacteria really start to become out of balance. And so the key is that over years, we've become more and more out of balance with high stress, with eating the wrong foods, maybe partying too much in our teens, all kinds of different things, pregnancy. So when we're pregnant, we have a higher amount of progesterone, which actually changes the chemistry in our body to benefit the baby, but the infections also benefit at that time also. So there are many reasons why these infections become stronger in our body. And there comes this tipping point where the infection load is just too heavy, and then we end up with any type of chronic disease. We're talking about MS today, but this is true for all chronic disease. So the key is that, yes, we do want to be aware of hidden dental infections. Maybe you've had your wisdom teeth removed at some point years and years ago, and maybe the pockets that are left became infected. Maybe you've had root canals, and we know that root canal teeth all become infected in time, and they harbor all these terrible bacterial infections and some parasites too. So either way, we have to remember that the biggest base camp of the problem is in our intestines. So we definitely want to treat that, but by the time we have chronic disease, the microbes have passed through the lining of the gut. They have moved into the blood. They've moved into different organs. And for us with neurological diseases, they've even moved into our central nervous system, into our spinal fluid, and into our brain. So we have to look at the whole picture. And yes, what we're seeing in our sinuses is that fungus loves to live in the sinuses. So if we're really out of balance with too many bad microbes, we call that dysbiosis. We end up with these chronic sinus issues. So we're stuffy often. Certain things will trigger allergies, seasonal allergies, but also we get a lot of bacterial infections, which we have to take more antibiotics, and then it makes all of these bad microbes stronger. So it's this vicious cycle. As we decrease the food to the microbes, and then we start to build up the body, and then we start to treat the parasites and the fungus, we notice that the sinuses clear, people don't snore anymore, allergies go away, and we can either reverse chronic disease or prevent it. That's the key, is if you're listening and you're not sick, you want to prevent it. Next question, will the Live Disease-Free system work for all autoimmune diseases? Absolutely it will, because all autoimmune diseases have as their biggest cause infectious disease. So there's microbes involved. Fungus is always involved with all autoimmune disease, but also parasites. And we've learned so much in the Live Disease-Free Academy with our Wellness Champion students as to how infested they are with parasites. It's huge. I've done other videos on YouTube and on Facebook on our Live Disease-Free Facebook page or Live Disease-Free YouTube channel. Make sure to watch them. I've done a 5-part series on different types of infections that are involved with multiple sclerosis. And I've even shared some different pictures of worms. So you can see all of that. So the key is that when you want to recover from any type of autoimmune disease, you've got to treat the cause. You don't want to just suppress the immune system and just treat symptoms. You have to treat what is causing this immune dysfunction, where the immune system is recognizing certain, like our tissue, it appears that it's recognizing our tissue as foreign, or maybe other substances as foreign, but really these microbes have many, many ways to cause our immune system not to work at its optimal level. And as we decrease the burden, we take that off of the immune system, and then it can just work normally again. And then it can protect us and defend us. It really becomes an unfair fight. So Anonymous, is chronic fatigue syndrome one of the illnesses that can be treated with the program? Absolutely. it's really interesting that we've been finding that there is some research showing that we know that fungal overgrowth is always involved with any type of chronic fatigue or chronic fatigue syndrome, but also with chronic fatigue syndrome, sometimes they're finding these tiny little parasitic nematodes in the blood of people that have chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, and they're very small. They would be the size of the dot of a pen, really tiny. And so maybe those little worms have not made their way to the central nervous system, so they don't have neurological disease, but they cause fatigue. And also a lot of these single cell parasites and bigger parasites, they can affect our mitochondrial function. And our mitochondria are those little tiny parts of our cell. They're like little energy factories. And when they become compromised, we're not producing the energy. So there's various different ways that these infections cause loss of energy or chronic fatigue. And then Deidre's asking, is medication the only way to treat parasites? No, it is not. So what we do in the program is, like, if somebody is not chronically sick and they don't have a lot of parasite symptoms, they may find that the herbs are helpful. But what we have found dealing with people that have any type of chronic disease is that the bigger parasites and the ones that are more deeply rooted in the body, they are not treated effectively with any of the different herbs that we have been working with. And we've been working with lots of different blends. It's a lot slower, it's a lot more challenging. And we find that the anti-parasitic drugs are well tolerated, so people, they feel well on them for the very most part. There's a very small percentage of people that have to go a little bit more slowly with them, but it just speeds up the recovery. And it's really difficult to treat different types of infections that would be inside our central nervous system, inside our blood, maybe affecting our liver or different parts of our body that are harder to reach if we're just taking an oral herb that is more working on the GI tract. So that's really important. And how does the Live Disease-Free Academy work? So the Live Disease-Free Academy, it is a 90-day online course. So we have people from all over the world, at least 15 different countries, taking this program. And in the program, you learn how to be the director of your health. Number one, we have a live call once a week. So if you are in North America, Australia, New Zealand, you can attend live if the time zones work for you. If you're in Europe, all our European students, they send in the questions. We all send in the questions. I answer them on the call, and then you can listen to the replay the very next morning when you get up. And so it works well that way for all our European students. But every week you are getting all your questions answered, and I'm also I'm assessing you, and I'm helping and pointing you in the right direction. So in this academy, I know you personally. I'm checking your blood work. I'm giving you feedback on your eating plan, your blood work, your game plan, all the fine adjustments, because once you get to treatment, you will be adjusting and helping you find practitioners, helping you to get access to these antiparasitic drugs and antifungal drugs, and treating Lyme disease, etc. And when do you treat what and how? How do you break up biofilms? So it's a really comprehensive program. It takes us 3 months to get through it to the place where you've built your plan, you've got it into place, and you feel comfortable implementing it. If you need a little extra support, there's grad support, but a lot of people don't need that. Are people cured in 90 days? No, they're not. We have some people that are symptom-free, but most of the people have had huge improvements, and they are very confident and happy because they know that it's been life-changing for them as far as moving forward, and they know how to continue. When we've had really deep-rooted parasitic infestations for years, it takes several cycles of treatment. It will take at least 4 to 6 cycles or more to treat these parasitic infestations. There's eggs. They can also sit dormant in our body for many months, and there's biofilms that we have to break up and treat. So it is quite a process, and honestly, most people don't figure it out themselves because, unfortunately, at this time, we do not have a lot of practitioners that understand how to treat these parasites. For the vast majority of us, we're living in countries where our government and our standard of care, they believe, oh, parasitic diseases or infections, those are in third world countries. Have you been traveling? No. Okay, you don't have a parasite. Nothing could be farther from the truth. We are treating our dogs, our cats, our horses, our animals. And yes, we are exposed to, whether we eat in restaurants, whether we put our handles on a shopping cart, whether we buy produce from different parts of the world, we may have animals. We can't avoid it, whether we're out camping and we're exposed to parasites. And sometimes it's even just walking on the beach in some countries and swimming, etc. So the key is we have to, number one, if we're dealing with chronic disease, we've got to treat them, knock them way back so that we become symptom-free, and then we need to treat or do like an anti-parasitic treatment at least once a year, like deworming ourselves. So Dawn is asking, how do you know if you have worms or parasites? There are very specific symptoms of parasites. There are so many symptoms of parasites. You can look online like symptoms of parasites and you can find tons of them, but especially things with the GI tract, maybe gas, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, fatigue, pain, mood issues, sometimes even back pain. They have found little nematode worms in the bone marrow of people that have back pain. And they treat them with an antiparasitic drug that treats that nematode, and then they don't have back pain anymore. And they accidentally found those nematodes. If they hadn't accidentally found them, they would not have known what was causing this person's back pain. I have shared different events on YouTube and on Facebook talking about this kind of research. Some of these, like for example, a tapeworm, the immature form, the larva can migrate up into your spinal fluid and can cause lesions there. So they're finding these little worms in our thyroid and in different cysts if they're doing biopsies, hard growths, etc. So they're finding them all over the place in our body. And usually they're saying, oh, it's incidental, it's accidental, we just happen to find them. It's like, no, we shouldn't have parasites growing in our organs, etc. And I really have always shared that a cyst is your body's way of encapsulating infection, right? And it is shown in the research that that is the case. So how do we know if we have worms? Unfortunately, at this day and age, you can have a comprehensive stool test done, but unfortunately, most of the parasites that are making you sick are not going to show up. You might have something little show up like blastocystis hominis or some other single-celled parasite. Usually they will show up if you've got a lot of bigger worms that are depositing waste in you and they're infecting you with other smaller parasites. That's often where you will see them. But at this point in time, even the DNA tests, again, if they have moved out of the gut and they're mostly present in your central nervous system, etc., they can easily be missed. So I personally don't really recommend for my students to do any of the stool tests. What we're doing is our students are going through the assessment. So health history is the biggest thing. Have you used a lot of antibiotics? Have you used medications that have destroyed your good, healthy, natural defense? What was your lifestyle like, etc.? And then what are your symptoms like? There are very specific symptoms for parasites. And again, it depends where they're located. You can have them in your joints and you can have joint pain. You can have them in your eyes and you can have these floaters and visual issues. You can have them in your central nervous system and have all kinds of different neurological symptoms. Some microbes prefer to live in certain parts of the body and others like to live in other parts of the body. So it's kind of, you're infected. The immune system and our natural defense was not intact well enough to protect you. And over time, because our standard of care didn't recognize parasites, doesn't treat for them, then the critters, they move through leaky gut into different parts of the body and they set up camp in different areas and give us lots of different grief and symptoms in different areas. So that's really how we know if we have worms. It's through symptoms. That is the biggest thing, is through symptoms. And there are lots and lots of symptoms of worms. So for those of us that have the neurological diseases, the neurodegenerative diseases like ALS, Parkinson's, MS, where there are parasites in the central nervous system and throughout the body, then we could have all kinds of things like extreme fatigue, spasticity, balance issues. They'll move into the bladder and will have spastic bladders, or maybe regular urinary tract infections, or just difficulty with urinating, etc. So that's a really big place that most people that have chronic disease, they have bladder issues and vision issues and mobility issues, right? And mood issues, depression, anxiety, absolutely. They're linked to mental health, to psychoses, to schizophrenia. It's crazy. And there is one scientist that knew this 200 years ago, and I have shared on one of my previous events about him. I can't remember the name of him, but he knew that all mental health issues was stemming from the gut, which is crazy. And he knew that 200 years, at least a couple of hundred years ago. So how do we know if we have worms? Through symptoms. And then I help people to find practitioners that can actually do some energy testing. That is about the only way. So my students have to take samples of the drugs, find a practitioner that can do energy testing, and then they're tested, and then they know which of the treatments will be most helpful. So they don't know exactly which parasites they have. They have a bit of a clue depending on, which treatments will work for them, but that is a key. And again, it's adjusting things. And again, with the treatments, it's not like just popping a couple of pills and you're better. We are layering therapies. So we're using antiparasitic drugs, and we're using oxidizing therapies, and we're using herbs and others all together to really bring down the burden. What is my view on the Roy Swank, or the Dr. Swank diet, which he really advocates for low saturated fats? So I just want to stop for a minute, and I just wanted to make sure that what I'd love for you guys to do is to share your questions with me. If you have any questions, put them in the question box. I will see if I can get to a few of them there. I know I can see that I'm not going to get a lot of these questions answered here. I will try to go a little bit quicker. So the Swank diet, I purchased his book when I was first diagnosed. So this was back in probably the early 90s that I bought it. I was diagnosed in 1988. And I tried his diet, and I did not find it helpful at that time. I did learn about candida. I did learn about infections. And so I kind of went more in that direction. Why would somebody have any benefit from this if it's not really helpful? Well, his diet also advocates for us to decrease the processed foods, the processed carbs, they will make our blood sugar go up and feed the infection. So I really believe that that is why. So what we're seeing is when our students are really treating the infections well, especially the parasites. And we've learned that the parasites are definitely the biggest part of the symptoms. The fungus is definitely an immune suppressor, and it's definitely, produces lots of poisons. But the real symptoms that are really huge in all kinds of chronic disease, especially neurological, etc., is from the parasites. So the key is that we're finding that bringing in a higher fat, so we're kind of shifting our body to be less of a sugar burner and more of a fat burner, because most of those microbes don't like fat, but our body can run on it really well. And so this eating plan, the Live Disease-Free Eating Plan, which we're going to have a cookbook coming out in the next few months, we'll keep you posted on that. But we found that when you decrease the food to the infections, and they love carbs, so decrease the carbs, but increase the fats, have enough protein, eat lots of low-carb vegetables, it really makes a huge difference in symptoms right off the bat. Again, we have to treat the infections. So I have not found that diet is helpful enough, especially when we want to set the stage to treat the cause. What do I think of Dr. Terry Wall's protocol? Phyllis is asking. So I love Dr. Terry Wall, and I love the work that she's doing. She is such an incredible hero. She has been in this field just a little less time than I have, so I've been in it longer, and so that's probably why I have the insights that I do have. As far as I can tell with her eating plan, that she is low carb. She's really following like a ketogenic type eating plan, which is awesome. Sort of paleo, more paleo, but for the real severe chronic disease, kind of leaning more towards higher fat, lower carb. But again, focused more on mitochondrial dysfunction instead of infections. And the key is that, yes, our mitochondria are suffering tremendously, because of the infections. But when we treat the infections, our mitochondria goes back to working normal and we have energy again. And that is the key, we want the highest quality of life. We have to treat the cause, which are infections. And again, if you have never met me before, I've got lots of videos on the types of infections that are involved with not just multiple sclerosis, but also all neurodegenerative diseases. And there are many people that are starting to get these weird neurological symptoms that don't have MS. So pay attention. If you're starting to get these like cramping of your fingers or your toes, like Charlie horses, it's not always just a calcium or magnesium deficiency. Sometimes those are little warning signs of parasites. And if you catch it early, you'll never have chronic disease. So rosemary, what are the best foods to eat? So with the Live Disease-Free Eating Plan, we are avoiding dairy except for butter. All the grains are out because we're not digesting them well, and the microbes the parasites and fungus are digesting them. And we're having lots of low-carb vegetables, 9 to 13 servings a day. If you have any type of inflammatory bowel, you eat the vegetables that agree with you that are low-carb, and you can steam, saute, oven roast, or stir-fry, absolutely fine. Listen to your body. Everything I share is for educational purposes only. So, lots of vegetables, enough protein to keep your weight on, to keep your muscle mass. You have to keep, so this is not a calorie restrictive diet. Very important. When you're dealing with chronic disease, you do not want to restrict your calories. You want to have enough calories, so especially people that are slim, especially if they've had a lot of parasites and they've lost a lot of weight, you want to keep your weight at least where it is or increase it. And you'll find that as you treat the parasites, you'll find that it is easier and easier to gain weight, which is awesome. So the key is that no gluten, no grains, no dairy, and we're having lots of vegetables, moderate protein, and enough healthy fat to keep our weight on. And the amount of carbs, the sweet spot seems to be around 35 to 40 total grams of carbs. For sure below 50, but 35 to 40 seems to be the sweet spot where people go, wow, I'm really noticing improvements. You know, my spasms are less. I'm having a little more strength. I'm sleeping better through the night. It's huge if you've got urinary tract issues, the low carb diet. And it's huge for autism and for diabetes and for epilepsy and for all chronic disease. And this is not my word, but this is what hero doctors are sharing from all over the world. It's hugely helpful. And especially because we're feeding the body and we're making it easier to treat the infections. How do I eliminate, or do we have to eliminate all carbs and sugars? You can't eliminate all carbs if you're going to eat vegetables. And that's why we're eating low carb vegetables and we're having lots of them, so we have lots of nutrients. But we are really working at decreasing the sugars. So we're decreasing all processed sugars, but things like carrots or red peppers, they do carry sugars, or maybe the red beet. And you're having them as an accent versus a whole serving. So we are greatly reducing the natural sugars. And tomatoes, they are fruit, and they will have sugar in them. So we might have a couple of slices on our big salad. We're not going to eat a whole bunch of tomatoes, and they're better raw than cooked. Next question. Why do I feel better and my mobility is better when I don't eat? Duh, that's a huge sign for you. Because when you're not eating, the parasites are quiet, they're fasting, they're resting. And that's why that is a huge confirmation for you that you are dealing with lots of fungus and parasites and bacteria also, I'm sure. Carmen, what are your feelings about medical marijuana and multiple sclerosis? My neurologist is pushing for it, but I don't want to try it. Medical marijuana, it is a plant. And it has medicinal properties. It has antifungal properties, so it has antimicrobial properties, but it also impacts our brain. I have heard from different dispensing places where there's herbalists working, that they've shared that if anyone has any type of depression or anxiety, they should not use it. I've heard also there is this really great documentary, it's called Messing with Heads. And there's research coming out of several different countries that people who use marijuana regularly, they have a higher incidence of different types of psychoses, schizophrenia, bipolar, and also depression. So in the Live Disease-Free Academy, we are focused on having a healthy brain. That is a key. So we are using treatments that will not be detrimental to our brain. I personally would not recommend using medical marijuana. There are many other ways to manage pain. You can try CBD, which is really low in THC. It has virtually, if you find a CBD oil that has virtually no THC in it, because it's the THC that is hallucinogenic. But sometimes there are some companies that have a CBD oil that can be helpful for pain. But again, even the eating plan and supporting the body, you'll start to see the inflammation going down and pain going down. And so there are much safer ways to treat pain. This person is asking, how do I get a diagnosis for parasites? I already shared that. Really, it is, you have to find, and I help people find practitioners that can do some type of energy testing to see which of the treatments will be most helpful for them, because you don't want to take a bunch of drugs that are not necessary. They all have adverse effects and they're expensive, so why take them unless they're helpful for you? At this point, that is the best way. It is going to change in time. Maybe in a few years, it'll definitely change. So I'm going to head over to your questions here. I've only gone through 2 of 7 pages of questions that I got in, but I just want to make sure that I answer your questions, because I see there's 49 comments here. Hi, Janae. Can we emulsify, not juice vegetables? Your Vitamix, not a NutriBullet, not your NutriBullet. You feel better when you don't eat or you have very little. So Maureen, the key is that for those of there are people that I work with that can't swallow, and what their care aides and their support will do, they will take the meal that they would have eaten and they will have to puree it. And that is only until they're feeling better. Like, so remember that we are treating the infection. So we're still eating the same way. It's like 80% of their plate is vegetables and 20% is protein. And so they're getting healthy fat, protein, and vegetables, but they have to puree their food, and they might make it into adding a little bit of chicken broth to it, or also some different herbs like dill will be good, or ginger in a different one. So you have different flavors. So if you're really sick like that, you can make sure to add enough healthy fat. But the key is, Maureen, is that you've got to get to the place that you're treating these parasites really well. That is your focus. But things like carrots, like I would not grind up carrots or put any fruit, because when you grind up things that have higher sugar, you are pre-digesting the natural sugars, and it's going to make your blood sugar go up. So if you have a smoothie in the morning, you throw a bunch of fruit in, then if you're dealing with infections throughout the body, that smoothie has fed the critters for a day and they're happy. They don't need to be fed 3 times a day. They will be just fine. So we don't want to feed them like that. We want to keep our blood sugar maybe a little bit lower, but we have the healthy fats in our blood. So it's not like we're starving, but our body is using fat for fuel. That is the key. So Jeanette, you think I said in the beginning, yes. I am answering your questions now. So feel free to put your questions in. All right. You're getting the claw, Janae. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but maybe it is that your hand is tight. If that is the case, I can't promise full recovery, but we have seen very often that people's hand that was clenched for a long period of time, years, has opened up. So this is the biggest frontier in treating multiple sclerosis plus chronic neurodegenerative diseases, is really in treating effectively, because we don't have a handle on all the different microbes that are causing neurological symptoms. We know that nematodes are a problem. We know that the drugs are not perfect at treating the central nervous system, but the exciting thing is that we are seeing dramatic changes in mobility and in also even using our hands, writing again, etc. Speaking, tremors settling down. It's very, very exciting. All right, so I'm looking here to see. Hello, Allison. Maybe I'll go to the top here. So what's usually just, let me see, oh, it moved. That's usually just a healthy choice, steamable. Thank you for all your love. Okay, so Janae, you had mono in 9th grade, absolutely. So when you have something like mono when you're so young, that means that you were out of balance at that point already, because the people that get viral infections are people that their immune system is compromised because you're out of balance already. So you would have had, before that, look back earlier, and there would have been times where you maybe had some antibiotics, etc. And that is why, like, not everyone gets mono. It's the people that their immune system is taxed because of the other microbes that they're dealing with. You are already out of balance at that time. I'm trying to work this Facebook thing here. Okay, so does your protocol benefit from other chronic illnesses such as rheumatoid arthritis? Absolutely. Rheumatoid arthritis is an infectious disease. That would be Teresa. It is an infectious disease. So as I mentioned before, different microbes like to live in different parts of the body. So I don't know anything about you, but chances are you have parasites in your intestines for sure. You have fungal overgrowth in your body, and you may have certain microbes that love to live in the joints, and that would be causing those symptoms. So I don't know you, but knowing, working with people, and we've had people that have, let's put it this way, people that have multiple sclerosis usually don't just have MS. They could have MS and Crohn's disease, MS and cancer, MS and diabetes and epilepsy. They can have 3 to 5 diseases, especially when they're on the disease-modifying drugs, because they really suppress the immune system. Hello, Danielle. And hi, Kurt. Frida, you think you followed enough to start, but about the counting carbs. So Frida, what I would do is, if this is the first time you've met me, I've got tons of wonderful videos on YouTube, Live Disease Free. Make sure to subscribe to that so that you know about all the trainings when they're coming. But the key is that when you want to treat the infections, you have to work with somebody. And that is truly the key to kind of going back in time to a place where you felt like your old self again, and to make sure that you don't have any more flare-ups of whatever the condition that you're dealing with. Okay, here we go. Hi, Maureen, I'm excited to support you. And hi, Lori. Awesome, I'm glad you're doing better. And Janae, no questions are being answered, obviously. I am now. Should you add probiotics to your diet? As far as, this is a really good question. I was actually just speaking with somebody today that's joining the program, the Academy, right now. And she shared that she actually did start the Academy today. Congratulations. So the key is that when we have a lot of parasites in our intestines and we take probiotics, sometimes it can make us feel worse, especially if there are a lot of prebiotics. So prebiotics, in theory, they're great. It is food to feed the little good guys that are in the capsules, because we want to establish them in our gut. But the problem is that the prebiotics will also feed the critters that are making us sick in our intestines. So I have had students that say they feel worse taking probiotics. I personally don't recommend taking probiotics. We avoid all fermented food except for raw sauerkraut at the start. If you can make your own, that's the ideal, but there's lots of places where you can get raw sauerkraut. It has to be raw, it has to be in the refrigerated section, and it will have many different microbes in it. Small amounts of that, just start with small amounts, and that can be really helpful. And especially when you make your own and you get these beautiful vegetables that are grown organically, preferably from a local farm or your own garden. They have this plethora of different microbes growing on them. And then you chop it up like you're supposed to, and you follow the recipe, and you let it ferment in your house for about a week to a week and a half. And all that diverse population of microbes start to just explode and grow. And the flavor is so good. The homemade, there's just nothing like it. I haven't made it for a little while homemade, but I am getting back to it for sure. And that would be the most diverse. A lot of times when you buy it in the stores, they will use cultures. So they might use a couple, 5 strains that are going to take over the ferment. And it's still beneficial, but honestly, when you can bring the wild ferments where you're bringing all the different microbes that we should have in our body, that is amazing. All right, and Janae, So insurance pays for pharmaceuticals, but they actually don't help. That is true. So with the pharmaceuticals, the disease-modifying drugs for multiple sclerosis, but also for other types of chronic disease, this is really important. I hope you get it, that with the way that we treat chronic disease is we say, oh, the immune system is involved. Okay, it is fighting. And so we're like, okay, what can we do to stop the immune system from fighting? Instead of, why is the immune system fighting? What is it fighting? Let's take care of the enemy, right? And so if we just keep focusing on shutting down the immune system, one of the drugs will, some of them will wipe out our B cells, which is a division of our defense. Another one will trap the lymphocytes in lymph nodes, which is another natural segment of our immune defense. And that is from a drug. And one of the students actually or the lady that is joining us today, she was saying she was on this drug and her lymphocytes became so low, she had to go off of it. So that is the key, is that even with chemotherapy, it is wiping out a whole division of our military. Some other of the drugs, they are preventing our immune cells from going into our central nervous system where the fighting is going on. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. And yes, these drugs are covered. They are super expensive. They can run, the newer drugs can run at least $10,000 per month. And we don't get our life back. We still continue to become more and more disabled because we're not treating the cause. We're not treating the infection. So yes, they're covered, but we lose our life. And so the nice thing is with treating parasites, if you work with some pharmacies that I wouldn't recommend, they usually don't carry the drugs. They will say that they're a lot of money, like thousands of dollars. The ones we work with, they're compounding them and they're very reasonably priced. But because they're compounded, they're usually not covered on extended care plans because they're more the generic, right? And not the expensive drug. But they work amazingly well, cost effective, and we get our life back. So Janae, yeast infection medicine could cure everyone. No, unfortunately, we've learned that. We thought that like back when I started, Dr. William Crook wrote the book, The Yeast Connection. Dr. Rona from Canada wrote the Candida Cure. I think that Comprehensive Candida Cure or Candida Guidebook. And then Dr. Luc de Schepper from Europe, he also wrote Candida, and Dr. William Truss. So they were really talking a lot about Candida. So Dr. William Truss, the missing diagnosis. So I found those doctors back in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's the direction, the path that I took. And that is why I've been able to live MS-free. But I did treat parasites early on with herbs. So if you're catching it early, it can be helpful if you know what you're doing. But honestly, I've never been able to treat parasites. Like I knocked back the ones that would cause the MS symptoms, but I was still carrying parasites. And once I learned from how the students are treating parasites, I have been doing it also. And all I can tell you is you feel so much younger when you get rid of them. And so now I'm going to be making sure that I do that at least once a year to knock back the parasites. And that's a very healthy thing to do. So the key is that, yes, fungal overgrowth is present. It needs to be knocked back, treated. We can never cure it, but we knock it back and we keep it down. But if you don't treat the parasites also, those little nematodes that Dr. Alan McDonald is found in every single spinal fluid of MS patients, and then they're bringing in Borrelia, Lyme disease, into our central nervous system. So it's much more than yeast. And the exciting thing is that I'm really excited for the future. I'm really excited for how we're going to help like more and more people recover quicker and quicker, knowing more about what are the most effective treatments. Catherine, yes, mucus also traps germs and toxins, absolutely. So your body produces mucus. And so like, for example, if we have asthma, it's usually some microbe, sometimes it's parasites, sometimes it's fungus growing inside of our lungs. And then when there is this flare up, we have this huge amount of mucus produced and tightening of the airways. And a lot of that is from different biochemical pathways. So leukotrienes can be produced by the microbes themselves or by our immune system in response to the microbes, where we get that immune response. So what's really neat is that to understand that a lot of the symptoms we're having and dealing with it is because of our immune response to the infections that we're dealing with. So our immune system, but again, these microbes, they have many ways to fool our immune system, to cause huge like overreactions, to make our immune system blind to them. So, and even hiding in biofilm. So there's at least 17 different ways that they cause immune dysfunction in our body, these microbes, and inflammation. And this is documented in science already. So why aren't we treating infection? I don't know. Maybe it's not lucrative enough. I don't know. Yes, you had mono in 9th grade. Yep. Is the program safe while breastfeeding? Yes. So Taylor, what we do in the program is you will do a modified version. So you can still learn on all the steps and follow an eating plan. You won't be restricting the carbs as much, but there are natural things you can do to, number one, really understand. So if you have, let's say you have some type of illness or serious symptoms, then you know you've passed on the wrong microbes to your child. So for myself, even back in the day, you know, my son was colicky and fussy. So I passed on the wrong microbes to him. So I knew how to help build him up so that he was not fussy. He was sleeping through the night, and it can be a huge game changer. So the key is to learn all of this so that maybe you can't do an aggressive treatment of parasites right now, but you can live in a way that you're kind of managing them. And then once you're done breastfeeding, then you can treat them, but you can also be really protecting your child's health and making sure that you are building up the microbiome of your child right now also. So it's really huge. And hi, Marissa. Yes, going through the health history is definitely a huge eye-opening experience. And that is something we do in the program too, in the Live Disease-Free Academy. It is a course. It teaches you how to be the director of your health for the rest of your life. People don't realize how important that is. Maybe you're sick right now, but maybe you're not sick right now. You don't want to be sick. And if you learn all of this, like I would have given anything to learn this, so I would not have had to go through the pain and agony of being diagnosed with MS. I was very fortunate that I was able to turn it around early enough, but it's awful to go through that, to go through feeling like you have no future, to the pain and agony of all hope lost, like your life is over. It's awful. And even the fact that I had permanent damage to my left eye, I can still function really well, but it would have been nice not to have that. And I'm so blessed that that's the only lasting damage that I had. But the key is that the health history that we go over and really understanding how you got sick. It is such an important lesson. Looking at your parents' health history, looking at your health history, so, and all the circumstances in your life that brought you to this place with chronic disease. Because when you understand that, you can make sure that you never, ever end up in this position again after you've treated the infections. So it's one thing to go to a clinic and spend thousands of dollars to be treated for these infections. It doesn't have to cost that much. But the second thing is, how do you make sure that you can be like me, 29, 30 years free of MS? It's because I've learned how to take care of myself. And so now I'm a grandmother, and I'm able to keep up with my 2 beautiful granddaughters, and we have one on the way in a month and a half. And happy Mother's Day. I had an amazing Mother's Day this last weekend, and I just hope you guys all, for all the mothers out there, I hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day too. All right. I'll see if there's any last questions. Hi, Roberta. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Cheryl. Okay, so Janae, you're trying to eat the Doug Kaufman diet, but you're unable to cook for yourself. So the key is that if you're dealing with chronic disease, I love Doug. I've been on his program several times, but the key is that he's following more of a Candida diet. That would be better for people that are maybe not as sick, but the key is you've got to decrease the carbs more. And just watch my videos that I have and my book, Become a Wellness Champion. And if you need support. So you are eating, and the key is that whether you have somebody helping you or whether you are doing it yourself, you should be able to follow this eating plan really easily. Because somebody is preparing the food for you. All right. Hi, Allison. See if there's any last questions here. Okay. And let's see, I think I've got most of the questions. All right. So on to the last one or two here. Just want to make sure it's something that's really important. So the key is that, so somebody was asking about not taking, I would really like to take more of a non-medical approach, but I feel that that if I don't take my meds, I could get worse. So can I take the program if I'm on different medications? Absolutely. So I never tell people to come off their medications. As you are healing, as your symptoms are going away and you're becoming stronger, then you work with your practitioner and you come off the medications in a safe manner. That's very, very important. And there's a lot of medications that it's not safe to just quit cold turkey. That's why we work with our pharmacists and we work with our doctors and we do things in a systematic manner, for sure. Any last questions here? I think that is it. So as far as Nina was asking how to join the program, the key is to watch my masterclass training. The replay will be in the feed of this event. So you'll be able to click on it and watch it. And then if you're at the place where you're like, Pam, I want a plan. I want to join the academy. I want to have hand-holding. I want a step-by-step plan. I want to treat these infections as quickly as possible and get on with my life. Then if you're ready to put in the work, which is a part-time effort, and you're ready to commit time and your finances into recovery, then make sure to book a time to chat with me. You will be invited to fill out a form, and then we will give you some time in our calendar, and you can literally start within the next week taking your life back. And if you're at that place where you're like, Pam, this sounds really good, but you know, this is so new to me and I don't really know you very well. I have so many videos on YouTube, and a lot of people that this is new to them, they haven't met me before, they just start to watch them and they start to implement, they start to feel better and they feel like they know me, and then they're like, Pam, I'm ready. So wherever you're at, I just want to tell you, I want to thank you for joining this time with me, and I want you to know that there is hope for you. You don't have to live like this, but you have to take a different path. That is the key. If you keep doing the same thing, you're going to have the same results. So you've got to take a different path. You only live one time. I want you to live your best life. Next week, I'm going to be here again at 5 o'clock Pacific, and I'm going to be talking about the 5 best ways to avoid parasite infections or infestations. So with that, I'll let you go. Take care and bye-bye for now.